Okay. Sorry again. I'll repeat myself here that today we have two panelists with us on our counseling your business clients to retirement, Kyle Danner and Dan Danford. And we're going to turn it over to Dan for his part here in 2 seconds. Sorry. All right. Dan, you're on.
Well, I'll start with this. I grew up as a middle-class kid. I got kind of a kick the other night when Vice President Harris started out her story on economics with that quote. And then she went on to say that many of the people that she grew up with and the neighbors, were people that cared a lot how their lawn looked. That was nostalgic to me because in my neighborhood, when I was a middle-class kid, I was the kid who took care of the neighbors' lawns, or at least the neighbors' lawns among the widows that weren't able to cut them themselves. And my father famously rented me the family lawnmower so I could cut those lawns for other people. So I guess that was maybe my first business skill. Fast forward 15 years later, and I was finished up my MBA and was lucky enough to be hired by a bank in the trust department. And the specific area I was hired in, I was called an employee benefits officer, which meant that I took care of pension and profit sharing plans for the various business people. And at that time, there were a lot of medical offices that had pension and profit sharing plans. And really, that was an opportunity and a light that lit up for me because if there were 3 lumber yards in town, the lumber yard I'd be working with was the one that made enough money that the owners were thinking about pension and profit sharing plans and things like that. And it was that way across the board. So I was lucky enough to work with business owners, and I learned so much about them. This is kind of a list of some of the various traits that they have, but the ones that are important to us today is that they tend to be pretty receptive, persistent, proactive, and creative, and they tend also to be financial and quantitative. Now, what that means is when we go to them with ideas and suggestions, they're very interested in them. These are the most successful people, and this is one of the reasons why they're so successful. So let's step on to the next slide. There are a lot of businesses, small businesses in the United States. As a matter of fact, I'd argue that that's probably the backbone of our economy and really, really important. But the sad thing is how few of them actually make it beyond the first owner. Roughly 30% survive to the second generation, 12% make it to the third generation, and only 3% make it to the fourth generation. I can think of local people I know. I can only think of 2 companies that are 4 to 5 generations, and one is a customer service kind of business, and the other is a manufacturer. So very rare. But the important thing is that you have to be intentional to make it to that second or third generation or to pass that business on. So when we talk to people about their retirement, these are some of the questions that we ask. They often say, well, I'm going to retire one of these days, but they may or may not have a lot of the work done on that. So have you set a date, timeline? Who do you need to tell? How much will you need when you retire? And maybe that's the key thing. So let's go on to the next. Good comments here from each of us. I'd say from the counseling standpoint, how will you spend a rainy day when you can't play golf? Very important. Where is your retirement income going to come from? From planning and protection, do you want to guarantee any of your retirement income? Next slide. This is very rudimentary, but it's very important. There are only 3 real ways to go if you own a business. You can liquidate it, you can sell it, or you can gift it. And so you have to help people figure out what's best. Of the 3 options, liquidate is the cleanest because you basically say, I'm going to close up business, we're going to sell everything, and we're going to be done with it in 2 months or 3 months or 6 months. It's a good idea if the business doesn't have a lot of ongoing value or ongoing revenues and that you have a lot of assets, okay? On the other hand, you probably get the lowest value for your company because you're basically selling assets, and you know what used assets are worth. So can be a good option for many businesses, but it's also the least profitable way to go. To sell the business is the most profitable option, because if you do it right, you kind of have an auction for people who want the business, you know. The problem is it takes a lot of work to get a business ready to sell. I'm lucky with my own business because I started it myself and I designed it from the beginning, and selling the business was always that was always my end goal. So I didn't have to make a lot of changes, but for a lot of businesses, they kind of start by accident. And, 20 years later, you're saying, what do I need to do? It takes a lot of work to get there. Even how you do accounting and things like that might need to be examined before you get there. And you also don't have a lot of time flexibility. In other words, somebody comes in and wants to buy it, they may want to buy it right now, or it's unlikely to get them to agree that they want to buy it 2 years from now. So there is less flexibility there. And then the last, which is maybe the most complicated, but also the most rewarding, is to gift it in some fashion to a member of your family. The family dynamics can be an interesting thing here. And you also obviously got to have somebody in the family who wants the business. In my family, I have 3 really smart, good kids, but none of them are interested in going into my business. So that limits your option there. But if that's one of the things that you're going to do, then you have to really process. I mean, this involves estate planning, it involves pricing. There's a whole lot of things that need to be done. So if you're going to liquidate, 5-year plan, what things can be sold, what costs can be reduced or eliminated as you prepare for that. Are there any customer contracts that need to be reviewed? You have to explain to customers what you're doing. Go on to the next page, dealing with the family. If you've got people working in the family, then explaining, hey, we're going to close down the business 2 years from now. That could be disruptive to them. Consider pension or other formal plans to maximize retirement savings. In other words, if we're going to close down 2 years from now, how do we maximize our reward for that 2 years? And then also in protection, what do you want to guarantee a certain amount of the income? What kinds of relationships with insurance and things need to be protected? Sell to an outside buyer. This one, the one I would go with that's most important here is establish a relationship with an appropriate business broker or go public. Reason why is on the next page. And Kyle mentions this here, assemble your advisory team. I'm just telling you, really, really important. Every lawyer will tell you they can do this, but there are only certain lawyers who work in it very often. It makes a huge difference. You want to look at how you're going to do all the things between now and when you sell, including marketing, advertising. You also want to develop, as Rob points out, a retention plan for key employees to keep them along until you get to the place you want to be. And then if you're going to do the family, a gift to the family, you have to decide, when you're going to do it. Are you going to do it after you die? Are you going to do it before you die? How are you going to transition that? It involves all kinds of estate planning, and taxes is really, really important. So gift to family, talk about strategic planning with the family. I mean, obviously this takes a lot of talk, and everybody needs to be on board, especially the people who are buying and the people who are selling, but don't forget siblings and things that maybe aren't involved in the transaction, but are going to be affected by it. So next slide, go on to that. Once again, takes us right back to the business owner mindset. These people that we're talking to, they're receptive, persistent, proactive, focused, flexible, and financial, which makes them the perfect clients if we can help them walk through that process. So now I'm going to turn it over to probably the meat of the presentation maybe, and that is a little bit about some of the counseling and other aspects that are really important in making all this happen.
Thank you, Dan. We know the top 3 reasons why businesses don't go past the 3rd generation often. It's family conflict. That's where guys like Kyle and you come in to be able to help them mindset wise plan for the next generation or the carry on of the business. Failure to plan, again, that's you as planners and why you're on the call today. Being able to better serve your business owners and be part of that team that they need to make it happen is important. And then tax exposure. We're all familiar with the potential sunset here happening in 2026. Federal rates are going to come down. More people are going to be exposed. I live in Illinois and we have a state inheritance tax at only $4 million. So oftentimes, and we're going to share a story in a minute here where, liquidity is key. And, some people use insurance in my world to help with providing that liquidity. And those are things that are needed to make the plan work properly. So I want to share a story. This is a family that I'm working with. In fact, we're going to be re-engaging again in January because deadlines are getting closer and decisions need to be made. But I've been working for years with a case and one of my advisors and his client that's a franchisee. He's self-made and he wants to hand the business off to his daughter who works in the business with him, but he's got challenges from all types of angles, which Kyle will walk you through. But he's been remarried for quite a while. So his current wife is a longtime wife, if you will. She's going to get her fair share of things, but not everything. He has 4 kids, but only from his first marriage, but only one is working in the business, the daughter, and he has 3 sons that do not work in the business. And so what the franchisee wrestles with is things like fair versus equal. Is it fair that his wife becomes the landlord of all the locations that operate the franchise situations, and the daughter just gets the operating business itself? This makes stepmom the landlord to the daughter, and of course they could have opposite goals there. Is it fair that the daughter has to share the value of the business if franchisee leaves it to all kids instead of just her? He struggles with giving up control versus ownership. So he has made some gifting, but it's a small amount of what's gifted. And so he's getting to realize that maybe the whole empire isn't going to be passed on here. They're going to have to liquidate and provide more liquidity to make things happen, especially with a higher estate tax situation. And this is an Illinois scenario where there's already estate tax for the state of Illinois. So keeping the business together is hard to do in this case. It'd be best if the daughter inherited all the real estate and the business, but it doesn't break out that way. And so that's going to be one of the potential areas for future conflict. And then imagine if you're the daughter and you're going to be an equal owner with your siblings who don't even work in the business. Do you really, can you tolerate them telling you how to run the business? So I'm a fan of acronyms, and I'm also a fan of Jelly Belly candy. And Jelly Belly makes this cherry jelly bean coated in dark chocolate. They're just like those cherry cordials without the mess. And so I use their acronym, and I encourage you to use this when you're thinking about stress and conflict in relationships, if you will, especially with your clients, and maybe it even works with your family. But I've learned to try to step back and see where the client is and try to get inside their head and think of it that way. Are they in denial over something? Are they, in my business, people can certainly be in denial that they're going to become disabled, right? But you tell them the stats and you try to educate beyond them remaining ignorant, if you will, right? They might not know of the stats or the chance of becoming disabled, and that's part of why they're maybe in denial that they don't need to spend premiums for things like that. And of course, we all deal with procrastination with ourselves and our clients, quite frankly, right? And so all we can do here is push, pull, prod forward and try to push the situation to fruition. And in the case of designing the business continuity, making the goal of whether we're selling or liquidating, or we're going to get it to the family, or a combination of those things. And then the last one is the word stuck. Some clients are just stuck on something. There might be a hidden objection or something that you've just not been able to uncover. A few other advisors have said the S could stand for other things, and I'll let you go on with that imagination. But again, trying to help clients, they're people, they get stuck with areas where they deny, ignore, procrastinate, or they're just stuck on the concept of stuff. So hopefully this little checklist is something you step back from a scenario and try to go through, because we're just trying to help them get past these things to actually get the plan implemented. With that, Kyle's going to take over now on this case study, a little bit more detail and how he would counsel people through these.
Great. Thanks so much, Rob. And again, thanks for pulling us back together again. Gang, we've done this a couple of times now, and we always do it in September, which is kind of an important month for me, because 14 years ago, on September 30th, I exited my family's business. So I grew up in a family business. We always had businesses growing up. When I graduated college, the family business was a small print shop that my brother and sister owned. My plan was to stay 1 year, but I ended up staying 17 years. And during that time, my brother, sister, and I, and a fantastic group of people, we grew that business from about 2 million in revenue and about a dozen people to over 18 million in revenue and 80 people. So that is a lot of growth, and that's a lot of change. And in case you're wondering, I am bragging because I'm really proud of what we accomplished as a family. But through all that change and all that growth, it became really clear that the family business and I were no longer a fit. So recognizing that, I sold my interest to my sister and I left. Struck out on my own, left everything I'd known for really about 40 years of my life, and went back to school to be a therapist. Now, say whatever you want about 17 years in a family business and deciding you needed to be a therapist. But along the way, I kind of found this area of family business advising, that there were people out there who helped both the family and the business work better together. Recognizing that, some friends said, hey, you should go do that. And you're like, I should go do that, having no idea what go do that meant. So I went out, started building a practice and coaching advisors like yourself, as well as facilitating family meetings. Along the way, I became a certified exit planning advisor from the Exit Planning Institute. And then I discovered EOS, because so many of the business owners I was working with, they were getting really, really frustrated because everybody was coming in from the outside telling them everything that was wrong with their business. And if you're a business owner who doesn't love that conversation, but they weren't giving the tools to fix it. So that sent me looking for a solution, and that led me to EOS, which is the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And so as both Rob and Dan have teed up, the case study that we want to take some of these concepts and really, bring them down to the ground and make it real is all about the franchisee that Rob mentioned earlier. And this franchisee probably looks like a lot of the business owners we work with day in and day out. In this case, the franchisee, he's 65 years old. He's been running this business for 40 years. He owns over 30 locations, and he wants to transition it to his daughter. He isn't quite sure what his next chapter will look like. Will it be 100% retirement? Will it be still active in the business, or some combination in between? He isn't quite sure what he wants his kids to get from it, or anything like that. But what he is clear is that he wants to make sure that his wife from the second marriage is taken care of, regardless of what happens to him. And as Rob has already teed up, there are some twists in this. So Rob, if you go to the next slide, please. So we all bring our different approaches to this. And so for me, I really want to understand, what is the vision both for the business and the family? I mean, really, let's get clear. What is he trying to accomplish? In my experience, so often where business owners get really, really stuck in this whole succession planning or whatever, it is just simply overwhelming. You've got family, you've got business, you've got their ownership, you've got the employees to think about, all of it. And it just gets overwhelming. So it's understand why they just shut down and they don't take action. Okay. But having a vision or understanding what the owner's vision really helps us answer three questions. What do you want to do? How much is it going to cost? And how will the business pay for it? And so often there is a gap from what the business is valued at today to the price tag that next chapter in life is going to cost. And so that's why it's important to have a strong relationship with somebody like Dan, to be able to help them understand where's the money going to come from, who's going to get what in the future. And of course, a key part of that in being able to protect everything is insurance. And as Rob can certainly talk about in great detail, all the various insurance vehicles that are available out there. Now, if we could go back, Rob, please. What we're seeing here in a lot of these questions is helping the owner really understand what does the next chapter look like. And to be totally transparent here, I am biased against retirement because I've seen it in my own family. I saw it with my father. I've seen it in other families when an entrepreneurial, a visionary entrepreneur retires and they have no plan, their health starts declining rapidly because they've lost their purpose. Or happy hour, instead of it being 5 o'clock, now is at 4 o'clock, maybe 3 o'clock. And before you know it, there could potentially be a substance abuse issue. And that is very common among retired folks because for them, work is more than a paycheck. It is key to their identity, gives them structure to their day, it gives them a purpose of their life, it gives them social connection to others, and it gives them status because we revere business owners. So when I'm talking to business owners, and this is a little trick you can bring and bring into your toolkit too, is let's really bring it down to the ground. Imagine, Mr. Business Owner, that you're at the country club having a cocktail, or you're standing in line at the grocery store, and you have retired from your business. You've handed the keys over to somebody else, and you say, and they ask you, so what do you do? How are you going to answer that question? Okay, because that really gets to what is my day going to look like? What is my life going to look like? What am I going to do with my family? Now, a key piece of this is how are you going to communicate the plan? Okay, what is it that you want to do? That is, how are you going to share the plan with the rest of the family? So the Exit Planning Institute, they do a series of owner readiness surveys, and they have found that more than half of all of their respondents, they have not hosted a family meeting to really share those transition plans. And so a thoughtfully planned out family meeting with your advisors is a really great way to share with the family to get everybody on the same page, what the plan are, and to set expectations to avoid those problems later. So next slide, please. As we mentioned, a key part of the plan, the one thing that we know is that the business owner wants to make sure that his wife from second marriage is well taken care of. Now, she is 10 years younger than he is, and her role is really a homemaker. She has no role in the business. She has no interest in the business. And so, of course, the business owner really wants to make sure she's taken care of, she's provided for. And that is like so many business owners that we work with, right? They're taking care of everybody. They take care of their spouse or their partner. They take care of their kids. They take care of their grandkids, their employees, their customers. They are caretakers. And it can feel really overwhelming in helping them navigate these decisions. Now, as Rob mentioned, a key part of this is helping transition the business to the daughter with that wrinkle of where his wife becomes the landlord. Okay. And of course, that presents all kinds of hurdles. So immediately where I'm concerned about is there is potential that if something happens to the business owner, his daughter and his wife will become business partners unintentionally. Now, I want to be really clear when I talk about this is I'm not questioning the wife's business sense or capability. I'm more concerned about, she has clearly stated she has no interest in the business whatsoever. Okay. Now, Dan, as the financial planner, he really wants to know, what happens if something happens? What are you going to do if something happens to the business? Okay. Now, when we talk about something happening to the business, it doesn't necessarily have to be catastrophic. All right. It can be the typical business challenges. So let's assume that this is, some type of an eating establishment. Okay. We know the challenges that restaurants are facing today, especially in post-COVID era. Margins are being cut into because of delivery services. people's eating habits are changing. It's difficulty properly staffing restaurants. There's demands for higher wages. So those alone can create exposure and really kind of threaten the wealth that's represented by the different franchises and their locations. Now, Rob suggests that maybe key person coverage is needed, and that might be a better option instead of making the wife a landlord. So, of course, you can already see it's getting complicated, but why stop there? So if we go to the next slide, please. The daughter, she's 41 years old. She's newly married. She has a child from a prior relationship. So new relationship and working mom. Not as if she's got enough going on in her life. She's also running these locations. She's been working for dad or with dad for about 10 years, but she only owns 5%. Okay. And so dad is gradually, shifting control to her, which kind of raises the question about what's his current strategy and why is it kind of taking so long? And so this is one of the biggest hurdles that we see in family businesses they face is when one generation wants to transfer the business to the next generation. The founding generation didn't require the amount of capital it needed to start the business that the current generation or the next generation now needs to purchase the business. Okay, and that's pretty typical, right? Rarely does the next generation have the financial means, whether it's the money or credit, to outright buy the business. The other side to this challenge is that for so many business owners, 70 to 90% of their wealth, their net worth is tied up in the business. That's why they need to have a really good relationship with somebody like Dan so that he can kind of guide them on continually pulling money out of the business so they're not so exposed with their retirement. But that's just one of the hurdles concerning the daughter. Okay. Next slide, please. The daughter has a lot on her plate. Okay. So the big question that all parents ask, they've asked me numerous times, are my kids ready? All right. Well, the question here is, what does ready even look like? Are you even sure what ready means? And I'm putting big, huge air quotes around ready, because she could be an incredibly really competent business person and manager. But does she have that entrepreneurial drive, that foresight that Dan talks about, that vision to be able to see into the future and make the decisions best for the business? Okay. That includes understanding what is her risk tolerance to make new investments, to reinvent and to reposition the business. Now, a lot of times when I am talking to parents about whether or not their kids are ready, what I see is that parents sometimes hold on so tight that the kids could be incredibly competent. They could be those visionaries, dynamic business leaders, but because mom and dad won't let go, or they're so afraid of the kids making a mistake, which is completely understandable, knowing how hard it was to start the business in the first place, that the kids can't really grow into their position. Now, of course, within this bigger context, what we also have to think about is the relationship with her stepmother. Okay. Because let's say the founder says, we're not going to do insurance. I want her to be the landlord. Sorry, Rob. Well, then steps have to be taken to really build and reinforce their relationship. Because what we don't want to have happen is for the daughter to be reduced to being the stepmom's ATM. That all there is, it's just a transactional relationship. Where's my check? Okay. Now, in thinking about building this relationship, it doesn't have to be a super complicated thing here. And a lot of this stuff doesn't have to be complicated. Okay. It can just be a mutual commitment on both their parts to meet for lunch or coffee once a month. The daughter can update her on the business and things that are going on, and the two of them can just catch up. It's just that habit of continually building and reinforcing that relationship. Now, this isn't about the daughter reporting to the stepmom. We have to think bigger picture here. It's really about them cementing their relationship and making sure they're on the same page of what's happening in the business and making sure that the stepmother's needs are taken care of. Now, of course, with this, if we could go back again, Rob, sorry, is the daughter expected to become the de facto head of the family once the founder dies, once the father dies? Okay. This is kind of one of those things that's assumed of firstborns, but it's not always discussed. Okay. Well, in this case, it gets even stickier because there's an eldest son and then the daughter. And so if dad is more of a traditional kind of guy, it may be assumed the son becomes the head of the family. Then that might get a little bit murky about, well, where's the daughter's position and everything? So she's got a lot on her shoulders. All right. So let's just keep adding more. So Rob, if we can go on to the next slide, please. There are other kids. There are 3 other sons. Okay. So they're 31, 33, and 37. The eldest is married. The other 2 are single. They have no involvement in the business whatsoever. All right. We haven't talked about them much, but let's go ahead and talk about them. Next slide, please. All right. Here's where setting expectations is absolutely critical at this point. And in fact, it's a lot easier to do it now than after either a health event or a death. Okay. And so this is, again, the value of a well thought out, well planned family meeting. And in setting these expectations, it doesn't have to be difficult. Okay. So parents always struggle about how to treat their kids fairly. Now, the mistake is that parents divide everything equally, but in this case, equal isn't fair. So if they give equal ownership in the business and they give equal control, all of a sudden, the daughter has now 3 other business partners who have no idea anything about the business, and they're not involved in it. Okay. Of course, there may be reasons why they're not in the business. They may not have the skills, they may not have the drive, they may not have the interest. Just like Dan was talking about his daughters, they have no interest in his business, okay? Or, meaning there's just not a place for them. So thinking bigger picture, there's always multiple sides to a story. So let's get back to talking about setting expectations. So one of the ways to at least mitigate potential conflict in the future is to set policies now. For example, like a family employment policy. Again, this doesn't have to be complicated, okay? You're only considered for a job if there's an opening and a fit. You have 2 to 5 years of work experience before joining the business. The value of this is that they learn on somebody else's dime, not yours, okay? You can even go a step further that they have to have a promotion before joining the business, even to the point where maybe they had some budgetary control, so they understand how to manage money in an organization. What we really want to avoid here, folks, is we want to avoid the business becoming the employment of last resort for family members, okay? That is, they don't make it in quote unquote the real world, so I'm going to join the family business, okay? Because it seems like we're solving a problem in the short term, but really what we're doing is we're ultimately jeopardizing the business, and we're ultimately jeopardizing the wealth and being able to take care of the founder's second wife. Okay. Now, again, setting expectations, this also includes prenuptial agreements. Okay. Because again, we're not just talking about the business, we're talking about the wealth of the family. Okay. And so making sure that prenuptial agreements are in place or they're put in place afterwards. And this is not about, people protecting their own little pot. This is about protecting the wealth and the resources of the family. Okay. And so again, it's kind of everybody stepping out of their own little boxes and really think about what is good for what's the best for the family, what's the best for the business. All right. So here we have some things to discuss. All right. Again, how are they going to spend their time in retirement? That's going to drive so much of the decision making. The other part of this is ultimately, what do you want your legacy to be? Why are you even doing all of this? And gang, when we talk about legacy, it doesn't have to be, again, super big and complicated. All right. I just want to take care of my family. I want to make sure my wife is taken care of. My second wife is taken care of. I want to make sure my grandkids can go to college or whatever the case may be. All right. But really understanding what's the ultimate vision, what's the legacy want to be. Of course, to make sure to be able to see that, is there going to be enough? Okay. And as we know, we're not just talking about the stepwife, all right, or the second wife. We're not talking about just the daughter. We're now talking about 3 other family members. That's 5 people in total. There's kids, there's grandkids, and all of that. And so the family building and the planning that has to happen to ensure all that's protected is even more important. Okay. And again, going back to protection, Rob's specialty, is this is really where life insurance and other insurance vehicles can really be valuable. Even though business owners, they don't want to spend the money on the premiums, it could very well be the best thing there to ensure the wealth of the family in the long term. Now, we've only scratched the surface of really what's going on in this case. I will say this, okay? Rob and Dan touched on owner mindset and the challenge of being able to get an owner moving on a succession plan or an exit plan or whatever you want to call it. You know, the case study that we're doing, Rob's been working with these folks for years. Dan's been working with folks for years. So have I. It is frustrating for us as advisors. All right. But gang, really, really, really think about it from empathy, from an empathetic understanding of what's going on. They're dragging their feet. They're avoiding things for a reason. And while it's easy for us as advisors to get frustrated with them, because let's be honest, part of it's our paycheck and how we pay and feed our families, we really have to take an empathetic approach to it. Because folks, all of us in this world, we're all avoiding something. A hard conversation, our own succession plan, our own family meeting, whatever the case may be. So turn that frustration to some empathetic understanding for the clients you're working with, and really use it as a way to connect with them and to understand what's going on in their world. And holy cow, you will become the advisor of choice. And so I'm going to turn it back over to Rob now, because he's got some resources and other things to bring us home today.
Thank you, Kyle, and thanks again for Dan. Unfortunately, I didn't press the record button at the start in time, so I'd like to respectfully go back and give you the bio info of both Kyle and Dan. Kyle, as he mentioned, is a former business owner of a family business himself. He is an EOS implementer. And you can just tell by talking to him, he's somebody to get in front of your business owners when they need this kind of counseling. We might have certain skills in what we do, but I do believe we're kind of psychologists to some degree when you're dealing with people one way or the other, but we're not as trained to get to things. And as I mentioned with the DIPS acronym, it's all about getting inside their head, seeing things as they do, and help them with what you know about planning to get through and move forward, to make progress and not try to be perfect in things. He is also a certified exit planner advisor and has a master's in counseling. And then Dan, again, in bragging on Dan, he's a longtime NAPFA member, which is where I first connected with him. And he has written hundreds of articles and several books. His latest with the Happy to Be Different book. I just love the name of that as well. So I thank them both again for being here today. And if you've sat in on our presentations before, you know that we like to give you a kit of information and just kick off that today is just the start of your learning on stuff like this. You can certainly reach out to me for any insight. I have a lot of experience dealing with high net worth individuals and business owners, estate tax planning. We will be doing a presentation, I believe it's next month's presentation, on life insurance planning for high net worth individuals. And so we will send the links out for our future presentations. But in your kit, we're going to share an article from Kyle on what the EOS system is. We're going to, and this is another piece about his business, this will be in your kit of info, so nothing to write down here. And for Dan, we could probably pick out an arsenal of different things. He has specialized with business owners in his marketplace. As he said, it started when he was at the bank, and he's only done more with business owner clients along the way. So he has many articles that he can share with you. And then I'm really big. I think as a counselor to people, we have to have aha and holy cow moments with our clients. help them see the light. They don't often see things as clear as we might for the paths to walk down. And I think we get there with discussions and key questions that we might ask them. So my favorite question for any business owner is, do you have an exit strategy? And it's not for me to help that person answer the question. That's where I want to be silent and let them answer. Because ultimately they're going to have to face one of the three options or a combination of the three of liquidating or selling or leaving it as a legacy. And no doubt we have oodles of stories. Just check out the Miami Dolphins story of the former owner, Joe Robbie, and how his estate shrunk from about 110 million down to about 30 million for his kids. And the shame of it all, when you think that people are smart business owners and that they're smart about everything, the shame of the Joe Robbie story is he was a tax attorney before he became a real estate mogul and an NFL franchise owner. And so he had to do the fire sale of the key asset in the estate, the Miami Dolphin franchise. And so those are just some of the stories. We could talk about locally here in Chicago, the Hallis family that had fights and nearly lost the Bears, and the Wrigley family and so forth. But these we might not be dealing with as high net worth clients every day, but asking questions, helping them think through things are important. This business checklist is a quick one you can put in front of your clients. And it's just a way to get a quick view. They can go down and answer yes or no to 10 questions, and we kind of have some insight. Before I get to our next checklist, I just want to emphasize, if you have questions, please add them to the chat box. We will get to as many of them as we can here as we round out our presentation time. And both panelists are on if you want to ask directly questions from them. So this other checklist, this is a little bit more involved, goes a little bit deeper than the first one. Depending on where you're at in the process, you might use one versus the other one. And these are two tools that we'll be giving. And I understand you might not use these verbatim as I might once in a while, but perhaps the best thing you can do is take a question or two that's not in your normal fact finding and add them there to be a little bit more consultative with business owners, especially those going to retire. This is an article that I penned. We'll be sending this to you. It was a NAPFA magazine article that I wrote a while back, and so you might research it on the NAPFA thing, but we'll be sending this copy to you. So again, this is something to help educate your clients. And I want to just mention, we continue to build resources for you and your clients. We want to continue to help you educate your clients, so that leverages your time. And we've created a portal that's our education portal on our website, and we'll send that address. There is a 40-minute presentation of counseling your clients for business continuity on there. And we also have a YouTube channel that we've landed. So this presentation will go up on the YouTube. And, you know, it is really meant for you, the advisor, but I don't see anything wrong with sharing these things and helping them with your clients as well. Because that's all we're trying to do at the end of the day, is help guide them to wherever it is they care to go. And, you know, is what Kyle had mentioned, that he's a little bit biased against retiring. I was pleasantly surprised when he told me that when we first met. And the reason being is I've done a 180 in my world. I used to think delusionally that I'd retire by 45 on a Caribbean island somewhere. And I went to a 2-week vacation in Hawaii, and you just can't go to the beach every day. You have to have something more important to do. So by day 10, I'm bouncing off the edges of the island of, I need more, I need active. So I don't see myself retiring at this point in time. Now, maybe something strikes me where I have to, but I enjoy what I do, and I get to meet interesting people all over the US and even some of the world. And so anyway, that's something for your clients to be thinking about is, what are you going to do when someone asks what you do once you are retired? Do you have another chapter? Now, in my case, I do have some charitable commitments that I like to participate in. If I slow down, I'm only going to work harder for them throughout time is the answer. So we have our three panelists, their contact info. Again, you'll have all this, but feel free to write it down if you want to reach out to either of them on anything that you've heard today. And with that, I'm going to just look. I don't know if we have any questions here. Give me 1 second. Yep. I always question these things of whether or not we did too good of a job or maybe didn't connect as well with the audience, but it appears we have no questions in the chat box at the moment. But we'll hold on because we need to run to 50 minutes. But Kyle or Dan, any additional information that you'd like to share as far as words of wisdom as we wind down here?
I do actually. Something came to me as hearing you talk, Rob. In my section of the presentation, I talked about the business owner setting expectations for the family. Here's one of the things where a lot of times, especially when there's significant wealth, parents are really questioning, well, I don't really want to I don't want the kids to know how much wealth there is. And it reminds me of talking and working with a financial wealth planner on the East Coast, where first generation built a business, sold it to Walmart, and I think they had north of $100 million in net wealth. His kids had absolutely no idea how much money there was until they had a meeting one day with the advisory team and they found out just exactly how much money there was. Okay. Imagine finding out your family has well over $100 million. Well, now the second generation is making the same mistake with the third generation because they don't want the kids to be spoiled. All right. And so now all of a sudden, the third generation is going to have this massive responsibility dropped on their laps, and they are not prepared for it. And so we spend a lot of time talking about how do you talk about wealth, address the issue of not wanting the kids to feel entitled. And that's really a very common thing, even when there's not $100 million there, when there is a significant amount of money. Well, as much as the parents have expectations of the kids about what to do with the wealth, the kids really want to know what those expectations are from the parents. They want to know, what is it that we're supposed to do with this? Okay. Yeah, there's education, maybe, helping with the family, but they really want to understand, what is it that mom and dad expect? So it's not this whole thing of like, kids being greedy, gimme, gimme, gimme. It's like, what do you expect us to do with this gift? How do we honor you all with whatever it is we receive? And I think that's something that's often overlooked in these conversations. And so I would really, if you got to the advisors on the phone or who are listening today, if you've got parents who are really scared about, I don't want to spoil my kids, I guarantee you the kids probably have some idea of that there's wealth. They want to know what you expect them to, or what the parents expect them to do with it. So it's a really great opportunity to start that conversation. So I'll throw it back to you, Rob and Dan.
Thanks, Kyle. And just as you were saying that, I just elaborate on one of the values of our jobs. I believe in the statement that I heard quite a while ago that 5 years from now, you're different from the books you've read and the people you meet. And that's the beauty of our job of meeting all kinds of interesting, successful people, both the advisors I serve and the clients that we help support. I do want to just shout out that our next 3 presentations on 10/16, we're doing life insurance planning for high net worth clients. Again, this emphasizes the looming sunset of the estate tax laws and things that you can start doing to shed wealth, if you will, and try to reduce or eliminate any tax exposure. On 11/13, we'll be doing annuity myths and today's reality. And then on 12/11, I'm debuting a brand new presentation titled Life by Design. And that's going to be the start of a 3 presentation little mini thing. What I find is as we continue down the changing financial planning landscape, more agents are becoming advisors and advisors are becoming fiduciaries. There's less and less people with an extensive insurance background. And I know people who've passed the CFP, CE, and so forth, and they give some insurance education in there. But what I see from my vantage point is people are maybe lost in the trees and they can't see the forest. So Life by Design is a macro view, and then we'll get into a more micro view of insurance, looking at ledgers and what they mean and stuff in the second presentation. And the third one will be all by design, life insurance in action. We're still building out the other 2 presentations and they'll debut next year, but just want to emphasize 12/11 as something new and for less insurance acclimated people to be worthy. So with that, I just, for people who've come in late, we require you per CFP to log 50 minutes. So I'm going to stay here for the next 8 minutes. So if you came in late, stay on with us. If you're done and have no questions, thank you again for attending today. Heather will be sending the kit out likely early next week, along with the replays and so forth. And so hope that you got a nugget or 2 of good information today. Again, Dan and Kyle, thank you for your participation. And if that's all we have, I'm going to sit here still a few more minutes, but I'm going to stop the recording. But you can stay on to log your minutes if you came in a few minutes late. Thank you again, and have a great day.